Topic for today is the idea of bridging the gap between physiotherapy and personal training. Many of us in this space trying to get a good understanding of when they have to go into physiotherapy and when actually we can start training them again and all this kind of thing and all the nuances involved in all of that.
Sometimes in the physical therapy world or the medical world, we tend to hold our patients back a little bit. We're just narrowed into just dealing with the body part that has the diagnosis, and we can't see the whole patient as a whole. We tend to maybe hold people back or put a little bit of fear in them around what their injury is and what they should not be doing. And then in the personal training world, sometimes I see people just pushing too hard, not understanding the boundary of where an injury could be inspired through an exercise program or even encouraged in an exercise program, and just not knowing the difference and just not knowing what to do in certain situations or how to prevent and rehab injuries.
Welcome to another episode brought to you by Imagine Strength, the future of safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training equipment. Are you a HIIT studio owner looking for equipment that's not just top-notch, but also tailored to your specific needs? Imagine Strength is your answer. Inspired by the legendary Arthur Jones, Imagine Strength is revolutionizing the HIIT industry with their state-of-the-art yet affordable equipment. Their team doesn't just sell HIIT equipment, they live and breathe it. I've personally experienced their gear at the Resistance Exercise Conference, and let me tell you, it was an intense workout that I won't soon forget, in the best way possible, of course. So why choose Imagine Strength? Number one, they provide customized solutions for HIIT studios. Number two, they have budget-friendly yet high-performance designs. And number three, they're committed to innovation and excellence in high-intensity training specifically. Founder Jeff Turner and his dedicated team are on a mission to make HIIT accessible to everyone. Getting started is easy. Number one, visit imaginestrength.com. Number two, consult with their expert team. And number three, choose the equipment that will skyrocket your business. Don't wait. Head over to imaginestrength.com and elevate your HIIT studio today with Imagine Strength. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to High Intensity Business, your one-stop shop for elevating your HIIT business and fueling your passion for high intensity training. This is episode 460. I am joined by Patty Durell, who many of you will know. Patty is a self-help educator and speaker, certified conditioning specialist, licensed physical therapist assistant, and the CEO of Rock Solid Fitness. She's been a featured speaker at business and fitness conferences, and also appeared on many popular podcasts, local TV, and news magazines. Patty, great to be with you. Thanks for making the time today.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm super excited to be with you as always.
You're very welcome. That's great to be with you. So obviously the topic for today that we're going to focus on is the idea of bridging the gap between physiotherapy and personal training, which I think is always really a hot topic in high intensity training, because many of us in this space maybe just aren't sure where our services start. Where do they come into that journey with a client? Maybe a client's rehabbing from injury, or a client gets an injury, and has to go to physiotherapy. Where is it where they trying to get a good understanding of when they have to go into physiotherapy and when actually we can start training them again and all this kind of thing and all the nuances involved in all of that. So I thought, obviously this is a strong expertise of your own. You've got a physical therapy background, strong personal training background running the business. And I'd love to just get an introduction on this by understanding kind of what inspired you to start teaching this topic in terms of bridging the gap, and where did that come from for you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Lawrence. It was really born out of the generalization, and I'm going to say that I'm generalizing these populations here between physical therapy and personal training, that sometimes in the physical therapy world or the medical world, we tend to hold our patients back a little bit. Sometimes we're just kind of, narrowed into just dealing with the body part that has the diagnosis, and we can't see the whole patient as a whole. And so I see that we tend to maybe hold people back or put a little bit of fear in them around what their injury is and what they should not be doing. And then in the personal training world, sometimes I see people just pushing too hard, not understanding the boundary of where an injury could be inspired through an exercise program or even encouraged in an exercise program, and just not knowing the difference, and just not, kind of out of ignorance, knowing what to do in certain situations or how to prevent and rehab injuries. So, and I see also, like, we'll hear it in our studio where my doctor told me not to work with a personal trainer, and that kills my heart because I know personal trainers have good intentions and want to do well, but sometimes because patients get injured and doctors see their patients injured, they put the correlation that my patients get injured when they see a personal trainer, which is not the case in 90% of the times, right? But the patient who's injured seeks the doctor's care. And so the doctor sees the skewed um, population that get injured through exercise. And so they'd rather send them to a physical therapist where they know that that limit is going to be, that threshold is going to be respected rather than a personal trainer. And we're in the
Yep.
business of personal training. We want personal trainers to be respected and to have the understanding and knowledge of how to keep people safe through exercise. So, and we can go down the tangent of, and this is something I think is important, and I try to go over in depth in my course of, what is a sport and what is exercise, because exercise should always help you, not hurt you. And sometimes sports activities come into play in our personal training world, and we try to, you know, cross that line a little bit. And sports inherently are risky to injury. And we know that when we sign up for a sport, that we're maybe putting ourselves in an element of a risk of injury. But never should that happen in an exercise program, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I
So
think
I would love to
many would
see.
agree with you.
Oh, go ahead, Lawrence.
So I was gonna say, I think many would agree with you, especially in our niche. Obviously, not in the wider personal training industry, but certainly in high intensity training. Very much agree with that statement.
And correct.
Mm.
Yeah, right. And I'd love to see the two industries work closer together, right? Where the physical therapist says, okay, now it's time for you to go to the personal trainer so you can take this to the next level. So you can get, increase on that normal ability that we got you to, that normal functional ability, and go beyond. And that really, I feel, is the personal trainer's role to kind of take that patient from the physical therapist and then push them into their next level of strength and ability, agility, function in their sport, life, whatever that is.
This is such an interesting topic because my mind, well, goes to like, how exactly do you achieve that, right? Because way I see it in our space is we can win over physiotherapists, doctors, etc., by often getting them as clients so that they can, or at least having them try our workout so they can see firsthand how we're different. And then I think that can really help solve this problem because suddenly you're getting more referrals and you're getting less, potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, less pushback from local medical professionals who are like, oh yeah, rock solid fitness. They do a great job. They're really safe. I have no issue. Whereas if you're not well connected or not well known as a high intensity training studio, they're just going to blanket statement, no, you shouldn't do any personal training. Um, so that's, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, and maybe we're going to talk about the how, and maybe you cover that in your course, which, by the way, I think that would be enormously valuable because that's more about obviously growing the business and getting clients to work with you when they get sent to a physio or that type of thing. Um, but one of the problems we have is personal training is an unregulated industry for the most part, right? Which is why the medical professionals don't almost like blanket no, don't do personal training because they know that there's much less rigor in getting started in this business. So like you, to your point there, you're far more likely to get injured. Now, with all of that said, I guess my question is, what's your take on how we actually go about building trust and not having this barrier where, the doctors just say, no, don't do personal training, go and get physio. How do we stop that from happening or make it happen less?
That's the golden question right there, right, Lawrence? That's the golden question. And, as you were saying that, it brought me to a time where I was doing an in-service for one of the largest orthopedic surgeon practices in our area. And I had the audience of these orthopedic surgeons, their PAs, the physician assistants, and the surgical assistants in a room captive with me. And I was talking about the safety aspect of, our training. And I've also learned, just as a side note, that when we use the words high intensity or heavy weight, heavy training, immediately the doctor, the medical professional is like, heavy weights, high intensity, that sounds dangerous. So we try to steer clear of those words. And we've learned that over the years. And it's really important with the clients to make sure that they understand the safety aspect first, and then why the progression in the heavyweight is important. And so the focus can't be on that intense heavy lifting if it's presented to the medical professional. I just don't think they understand that. But back to being in this room with all these orthopedic surgeons, surgical techs, and physicians assistants, I was talking about, exercise. And all of a sudden they kind of just started to talk amongst themselves about their own exercise program. And they had all joined, one of these community-based kind of repetitive sports like very competitive environment together. And so they started to break out into all the injuries they had from this program, this exercise program that they were doing that they loved. What surgeon had tennis elbow so bad that he couldn't hold the clamps himself during surgery if he needed, and how he needed the extra surgical assistance. And so it was clear to me at that moment that I was talking to some of the smartest orthopedic professionals, yet they didn't really get it themselves. They were all injured, knee tweaks, back tweaks, to where it affected their profession. But the light wasn't dawning on them. I could not convince them that what we did was better than what they were doing, even though they had all these injuries. So I feel like sometimes it's difficult for us to communicate to these professionals. And you're right, getting them in and showing them and having them learn is the best, absolute best way.
That's so interesting. So you're saying like you can describe this, you can be Doug McGuff level articulation, talking about resistance training to these medical professionals, and you can do that to your blue in the face. But for many of them, until they actually sat in that leg press, doing it for real, under the supervision of someone like yourself, it doesn't matter. They have to experience it. They have to feel it. It's the same reason why I remember talking to Luke Carlson, CEO of Discover Strength, why he didn't feel that it was a good strategy to pre-sell sessions when you're first opening a high intensity training gym, because people have to feel it to really understand the value. And so if you're selling something and they're just, looking at an offer page and making a decision, it's not the same as if they try the workout, which I thought was really quite profound. And it's the same thing here. People have to feel it, right, in order to actually really understand what it's about. I love also what you said there about terminology. It's so important. We've probably been talking about that for a while on the podcast in terms of like, don't use the words high intensity training because it's so highly ambiguous, so cliche. It means all sorts of different things to different people. It's going to scare a lot of people away. And I love how you've also talked about that here in this context. And it got me thinking like resistance exercise or strength training. Probably, I would say personally, resistance exercise sounds the most gentle, one of the most gentle options. And I also love what you said there about don't say heavy weights. It's like, I've actually had this situation happen in our local studio here, Optima Strength in Galway, where I was talking to a trainer and they were talking to me about, dealing with a client who had an injury, and she said she can't do heavy weights. So then say, we won't use heavy weights. What does heavy weights even mean? It's completely subjective, right? And we all know that you can be so creative in resistance training or high intensity training, whatever, where you can use very little weight and still get someone to fatigue using different protocols. Again, it's so subjective. It's just about using a meaningful load that's safe, right? So these things really matter, like being able to articulate and practice this and using different language can really help. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we stick to the term progressive resistive training, right?
That's good.
That came from the physical therapy world. I think it was Delorme that kind of coined that phrase and made it popular in physical therapy. Um, so progressive resistive training, progressive resistive overload is the name of the game. And if we just stick to that and we say, hey, we try to say, we're going to meet you where you are. Wherever your strength is where we're going to meet you. And then we're just going to build on it. And that's, I think, a better way to say it. But the effort is hard. And so sometimes the effort equates to heavy weight, because it wouldn't be so hard if I weren't lifting so heavy. I can remember being introduced to this high intensity training style and being in the gym with the man I married, Dave Durell. And, a woman came up to me as she saw me struggling on a machine. And she said to me, if you just lowered the resistance, it wouldn't be so hard. Right. And so we think that, that effort is because of heavy lifting, but really, as you said, effort can come from a lighter load, but just increasing different protocols during it. So the name of the game is safety. And we know that if we do certain things, we can keep it safe. And that's what this course is all about. Sometimes we don't understand certain joints that can't be stretched beyond certain limits, or else eventually that might creep up on us. Or how do we just, perform exercise, in a safer manner, not eliminate it or omit it, but just do it safer.
Yeah. I want to get into some examples in a moment. But just to kind of I guess, wrap up this section. So what you're kind of saying is, what I'm hearing is that you feel like the only way really we can get more medical professionals on board is if they're exposed to our training protocols to build those relationships up. Because trying to tackle this from a regulatory point of view, trying to bring in more standards, maybe there's other ways that this can be achieved, is probably a mammoth task. It may be an impossible task. So is that your advice to most studios in terms of how they can perhaps get around a lot of this, is just to build those relationships up, expose local medical professionals to their protocols, demonstrate good knowledge, understanding of safe resistance training? Is that the best way? Are there other things that listeners can do?
I would say yes. And, being in the field of physical therapy and having the connections I have in my community for such a long time, I will say this here publicly, that I don't think it's the best thing for us to try to recruit doctors and physical therapists as referral sources. Unless it's they themselves that we are targeting to come in to experience it. And it's hard to get them to do that sometimes, and that's relationship building 101. And it takes time to cultivate those relationships. But once you can, we have some great relationships with doctors that refer to us, but it's very far and few between. And I just want to touch on this also. I think here, physical therapists have to become doctors of physical therapy. You can no longer become a physical therapist with a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. You have to have a doctoral degree. And so not only is it a lot of time and money, but even though you graduate with a doctorate degree, you still do not have direct access to the patient. You still have to have a doctor's referral for that. Now, there's some loopholes in the state of Florida, and I'm sure in other states, that you can get around that. So here you go through all this school, all this training, you become a doctor of physical therapy, and the personal trainer gets direct access to the patient, but the physical therapist doesn't. The massage therapist does, the chiropractor does, but the physical therapist doesn't. So that in itself seems to be a problem in the industry. And then I sit on some advisory boards for colleges, and most of the students that graduate with an exercise science degree, they don't want to stay in that field. They want to go on to become a DPT or an ATC, an athletic trainer. So why is that? Why is this profession?
What's DPT? That's physical therapist, right? Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why is this profession of personal training not respected in a way where you graduate with an exercise science degree, you're an exercise physiologist, and you're not going into really probably what you loved, which was strength training and spending time with people one-on-one.
Mm.
I just think there's a lot wrong with the education system around that. And most DPTs, at least here, aren't aren't maybe doing what they really set out to do, which was patient care. They're evaluating the patient and doing all the paperwork for the insurance companies to justify their treatment. And the reason why I don't think it's the best route for us to go to those physical therapy places and ask for these referrals. My experience is once the patient has to start to pay for their physical therapy, they don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
When the insurance company's paying for it, they're fine with it. So it's not a big market for us, I think, I've experienced, for us to have people who have discretionary income ready to pay for personal training at a level where it would really help them.
So let me just make sure I understand this right. So what I'm kind of hearing is obviously physical therapists only get clients through doctor referral, or they're only, yeah, is that correct? They don't go straight to end user, as you said, right? And it sounds to me like it could be quite a miserable profession because it's like you're only helping people for a short amount of time until they stop doing it. Because I don't know whether this is, tell me if this is the case in the US. People see physical therapy as a short term thing. They never see it as something that has to be carried on throughout your whole life because ultimately, strength training, exercise, it is all physical therapy, right? In a way. And therefore, it's never, they go into it with a mindset, this is going to be a short term thing. So they do it for a while. They pay for their sessions with the physical therapist. They do some at home, some of them,
Mhm.
and then they stop. And that physical therapist must be thinking, what was the point in that? Unless they have, like you say, a customer who's going to, like, actually someone who's going to stay with them long term, which I'm sure happens. Maybe that happens quite a lot. I don't know. Um, or they have a connection with a studio like yours where they can send people to, right? And surely that would be way more fulfilling because at least you're thinking, oh, I've got this person on the right track. And now they're going to a place where they're going to get administered really, safe, evidence-based strength training service, and they're going to get healthier and healthier. And that's great. Why isn't that happening? Explain that to me more. Sorry, I know you're probably going to go over the same ground, but that to me sounds like that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, our whole goal as therapists is to get people independent. That's our goal, is to create independence for people. And we try to do that through education and through a home exercise program. And, it's changed a lot over the years. I think a lot of people have they might have an attorney in their back pocket. They might have a physical therapist in their back pocket that they see on and off for injuries. When they get injured, they go see their physical therapist. But we're in the business of preventing injury as much as
But
we
how can they
can.
do that? How can they do that if they firstly need a doctor's referral
They go to the doctor and then they
first?
get a
Okay,
doctor's.
got it.
I got injured. I need a referral for physical
And I
therapy.
want to go to so and so. They'll say that.
hmm
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I broke your pattern there. What were you about to say?
No, no, that's fine. And sometimes, we don't, as a consumer, as a patient, even understand that we have a choice with physical therapy places as well. Because sometimes the prescription is written on a pad for a certain place, but people will learn, hey, I really got great results with this physical therapist. There's, of course, you know, people who concentrate on niches just like we do in our industry, therapists who concentrate on running or concentrate on maybe neurological issues or things like that. So,
Right.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Makes a lot of sense.
I don't know
So
if I answered your question there,
I
Lauren.
can't even remember what my original question was, Patty, to be honest.
Great.
No, it was yeah, no, it was just yeah, it was just trying to understand the dynamic, like why isn't there dynamic like I described, where the
Mhm.
physio pushes onto the as it builds a relationship up with a long term provider of fitness services, like personal training, like Rock Solid Fitness. Um, and listening to you there, I was wondering, tell me if this is correct. Is it that the incentives are misaligned, right? So they almost want, not that they want, but if the person has problems later on down the line, they're going to come back and that's going to help
Mhm.
them generate revenue in their business. Which sounds like, I don't think any physios are like, necessarily evil or anything like that, but that almost makes, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's, they'll have some physio, they'll get back to a baseline, they'll then re-injure or have another issue, which they could have avoided had they been doing some kind of personal training. And then they come back to the physio again. Is it all come down to incentives at the end of the day? Is that accurate? Am I off there?
No, I think that physical therapist does create an exercise program that they want that patient to continue. I think that the therapist always gives some kind of a home exercise program, whether it's reasonable or not. In my experience, it's a lot to do, 3 sets of 10, 3 times a day. Next thing you're doing 2 hours of physical therapy exercise and you don't have any time for anything else. And really, at what point do you stop that and get on to the next level? We know that baseline is important and being able to function in your life is important, but I don't think any of us want to be normal functioning human beings. We want to be beyond normal, which is how we live our life. But I don't think any physical therapist kind of sends a patient on their way and without a plan for them to do better and stay away from their injury. I think they do a lot of educating and a lot of talk about do's and don'ts. I also think that sometimes, in my experience, especially my last real stint in physical therapy, I worked on a brain injury team, and constantly my patients would be given, you'll never do that. And whenever you put a limit in someone's head, there's fear on that, and fear holds us back, right? So why would I ever try to get strong enough to walk unless I had an innate fight in me, a little rebel in me that said, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. I'm going to go do something different. When you're in that situation where your life has changed so drastically from an injury physically, orthopedically, or neurologically, I think that you're susceptible to what these experts are telling you, and the belief system becomes really congruent. So I don't like the fact that sometimes we will hold people back and tell them, don't ever do, don't never do that. I have a client right now who was in physical therapy well beyond her insurance payment, well beyond, what she wanted to be, 3 years. And she was told, you'll never travel again by yourself because you won't be able to manage your luggage. And this is a professional woman, traveled for her career. You'll never travel again. You'll never be able to lift weights. You'll never be able to run. And she trusted us and came in and started working out with us. I mean, not only does this woman travel by herself and push luggage all over the place, she'll carry 35-pound cans, in each hand and run around our gym with them. She pushes weights overhead. And, she never thought she'd be able to do these things because her physical therapist told her, you'll never this, you'll never that, you'll never this.
Or was that shoulder issues?
Shoulder and neck. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And are you saying really she's still having physio as well as doing the strength training? Is that correct?
No, she gave it up. She gave it up when she started training with us. She was like, I am paying out of pocket for this physical therapy. I'm going 3 times a week. I'm not getting better, and I have this limit on me, and I'm never going to be able to do these things. And I came along and said, I don't believe that. Let's try it. Let's see if we can accomplish this.
Today's episode is sponsored by Imagine Strength, the game changer in safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training machines. When it comes to HIIT, Imagine Strength is your go-to for intelligently designed, efficient, and affordable equipment. Their team is passionate about HIIT, and it shows in every piece they craft. So why are Imagine Strength the right choice? Number 1, they tailor-make their equipment for HIIT studios. Number 2, they provide cost-effective solutions for your business. And number 3, they are committed to ongoing innovation and refinement. Ready to take your HIIT business to the next level? Visit imaginestrength.com to discuss your needs and find the perfect gear for your studio. Join the HIIT revolution of Imagine Strength and transform your workout experience today. Let's go. Yeah, and I think I will just say it now, for those who maybe don't get to the end of this podcast. Hopefully, most people do. But what Patty's really focused on now is obviously helping people, helping studio owners, personal trainers bridge the gap between physiotherapy and personal training. So, because when I'm listening to you there, Patty, I'm like, wow, that's amazing that you were able to work with that client, massively improve her quality of life. And obviously this is very case by case, and there's instances where obviously physiotherapists are really important and needed, and they form part of the whole sort of training experience for the client in terms of like rehabbing an injury or what have you. So this isn't always the case, but I can understand why in this instance, this person obviously started with physio, then progressed to personal training with you. And, if you do that, if you manage those sequence of events properly, there's probably no reason to go back to physiotherapy, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, but I think that's impressive that you're able to do that. And I think the knowledge that you have there in terms of how you work with clients to help, I guess, win them over or help give them the confidence in what you're doing and what you can do for them to stop doing physiotherapy is something that I'm sure you would cover in your speaking in your courses. So if people want to contact you to learn about that, it's info@rocksolidfitnessfl, that's Florida.com. And we'll have those in the show notes too on episode 460. So Patty, I want to move on to another talking point here. So you mentioned here.
Yeah, Lawrence, just if you don't mind, I just want to wrap up that last comment. Like, had that person gone to maybe a personal trainer that didn't understand her herniated discs in her neck and how to start her with progressive resistive training, what things to start with, to test, to go into that back door of neck strengthening, if she could have had a totally different experience with her personal training and really gotten ruined, where maybe she would have never been able to do those things. So I think that's the gap that needs to be bridged, to be able to take a patient like that and know what not to do in the beginning, especially how to test those waters safely, how to have that open communication with that client and let them know, hey, you know what? This is going to be 2 steps forward, maybe 1 step backward. And the communication has to be constant in the beginning. How do you feel? What's going on? Constant check-ins. And then the understanding that I might take a step backwards and I need to be okay with that. You have to get buy-in from that client, and that's so important. And that builds the trust as well.
Mm. So actually, what I've been thinking we should perhaps talk about next is what you were saying on email to me about functional assessments and how they can be done during the workout, don't require additional time or skill. But I would love, I guess it would be good to, just looking at the time, because I suspect this will consume the rest of our time together. So it would be good to go through maybe your system for doing a functional assessment during a workout. And I guess we're going to be talking about someone who has orthopedic issues, right? Someone who is perhaps coming off an injury or rehabbing. Maybe they've come to you from a physiotherapist. Talk us through that process, how you go about doing that assessment.
Yeah. So, I mean, we really collect a lot of subjective information from our clients. How are you feeling? And take a deep dive into any issues they might have had in the past or they currently have orthopedically, injuries, how they feel, and then to take that a step further, if they are having pain issues, what positions, what movements create the pain before we ever go into the gym. We also do an in-body assessment so we could see how much, muscle to fat they have on their body. Their segmental analysis from right arm to left arm and right leg to left leg is even.
Just pause 1 second. Did you?
Sure.
What you were talking there about it sounded like functional movement screening, like seeing which movements. No, we're not talking.
We don't
Yes
do
or no?
Just verbally at first. We don't.
Oh, I see. So you'll say, does it hurt when you do this? Tell me where it hurts, like what movements make it cause you pain, that type of thing, right?
Correct.
Okay,
just
got it.
Subjective from them. Just, gathering that information because really that person knows, like if I reach behind in the car, that hurts me. And so that gives us
They always know.
some pieces of the puzzle where we know, okay, when this joint is stretched in this position, it's a problem. Or, I get this zing down the back of my leg when I bend over and tie my shoes. Or if I extend, it just helps us understand what movements we might need to stay away from before we even go into the gym. Because the worst thing to do is to put that person in the position that causes them pain to find that out.
Got it.
The old adage of if it hurts when I do this, well, then don't do that is a pretty good thing to live by, right? As physical therapists, we're trying to reproduce the pain all the time. We're trying to find that diagnosis and reproduce it so we can know exactly what's going on. And I think we kind of get ourselves pigeonholed sometimes like that. We're not looking at all of the things together. So we do a lot of subjective analysis first. And then, of course, we get their medical history, any kind of surgeries they've had. There's certain things just based on surgeries that we just won't do. If somebody had a certain thing, we just knock a bunch of exercises out of the way or modify them immediately. So we have a bunch of modifications that we might have to make for that specific person before we even go into the gym. We know some of the things that we need to do.
Patty, when people work with you, do you give them the playbook? Like if it's like, if this, then that. So if they have this surgery or this injury, do not do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, we have an injury
Top secret.
protocol. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. So once we take them into the studio and we're putting them on equipment and we kind of already know some things about them, things start to become very aware if you know what to look for. I can see a person has tight hamstrings on a leg press. I don't need to do a functional screening assessment with them to learn that. And so if I see that, then the next thing I'm going to do is give them some home exercise stretches. We're not going to spend time in the gym at Rock Solid twice a week trying to stretch a muscle. That needs more than twice a week, right? But the best way to do it, of course, is with resistance. So we know we're going to get good stretching with them, but we're also going to give them things to work on at home. I can tell, if someone has poor posture, if their shoulders are tight, just by the way they move on our preacher bicep curl. If they have lower trap weakness, like you can see so much by the way people work out. I don't think functional assessment tools are necessary personally. I think that when we're in a personal training environment, we don't need to do those tests and then redo those tests to see if there's improvements. We can see it through their exercise, through the range of motion on the machines that we have. I'm speaking to a high intensity training audience here. So a lot of times we manipulate machines to accommodate for range of motion deficits, right? And so we can see that deficit improve as that modification goes away.
Yeah.
So an example of that is on our leg curl or medic's leg curl. Sometimes people's hamstrings aren't stretched enough to just get to extension. We have to gap the machine in the weight stack. Once that person continues to strength train with us, that gap decreases and all of a sudden the weight stack's touching. And we can show that client that, look, your hamstring length has improved. Your back pain isn't as bad. And there's that correlation.
You're making me realize I need to be using a Med-X leg curl more to alleviate some back pain that I am currently experiencing, as well as obviously lumbar extension, which I do use. So when you said there about the home exercises though, where you said that if that client's got a tight hamstring and you might say, hey, do these things at home. How many actually do that, do the exercises?
That becomes part of our accountability check-in for our clients.
Okay.
And so we will ask them once a week, are you doing your stretches at home? And then it's on them. I would say maybe 50% do it. It's amazing. They'll come in and complain about their back pain and not do their stretches. But at least we're trying and we're not shaming them. We're just like, hey, we know this will help you. You asked us to hold you accountable to you doing your stretches at home. Are you doing them?
Can we maybe we can talk about a specific case here? So someone's got tight hamstrings on the leg press. How is that manifesting? Like you're the expert, Patty. So what do you see when you see that? What I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell that, I don't think. And then yeah, just first answer that first, and I'll go on to another question. How would that manifest?
You see their whole pelvis come forward when their legs are extended. You see a um, lumbar flexion because their pelvis
It's
is moving forward.
compensating, basically.
Mhm.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
They might not even be able to get their knees straight, right? We don't want anyone to lock them out, but you
No.
should be able to straighten them. And if as they're straightening their knees, their whole pelvis kind of rotates forward, it's usually tight hamstrings.
So this is interesting. So a lot of our colleagues would say, "Oh, well, you just like you mentioned just now, you might modify the machine, you might have them do like a modified range of motion. They don't need to be doing any stretching exercises at home. They're going to get that stretching in the workout, in the exercise, and then progress that range of motion over time. Or maybe they'll use other exercise in the gym, other machines to try and alleviate that and improve on that hamstring flexibility. So you sounds like you somewhat disagree with that. So what stretching exercises would you recommend, and what does that protocol look like that they would do at home?
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that if the person doesn't have chronic back pain, right?
Hmm.
If someone's walking around with tight hamstrings and they don't have chronic back pain, I feel like the program that we put them through will alleviate that flexibility and provide them more range of motion. But if they have chronic back pain and they come in with that and I identify, hey, your hamstrings are tight. I can see even on the leg press, I can see if they have weak abductors, right? Their knees will keep collapsing in. Or if their hips are so tight that every time they flex, their knees come way out past their shoulders. I know they don't have internal rotation of those hips. And those things lead to back pain, tight hips, hamstrings, lumbar spine. So if this client has chronic pain, I'm going to let them know, hey, I can see your hips are really tight, your hamstrings are really tight. And if you want this to improve quicker, like daily stretching for chronic pain of the back is just something that people benefit from.
What kinds of stretches?
So we lay them on their back and we have them do their hamstring stretches. One, both hands behind the knee and straighten the knee as best you can, just until you feel a good, strong stretch. No shaking, no pain. Hold it 30
Like
seconds.
in an L
Repeat it
shape,
3
like
times.
pulling your legs all the way up.
Yeah,
Is that
I
right?
can demonstrate for you.
Well, in a chair, that would be impressive.
I like that.
Oh, I see. Very flexible,
So you're
very
laying,
impressive.
if you could imagine laying on your back and grabbing your thigh behind with your hands behind
Hmm.
your thigh, and then just
Got it.
straightening your leg. One, it keeps the lumbar spine supported, right? We wouldn't do a sit and reach
Yeah.
kind of thing or put your heel up on a bench and bend over because you're getting mostly lumbar spine flexion.
Is that mostly the benefit you're getting from those type of stretches? Now, firstly, what would the protocol look like? Would that be once a day, multiple times a day? How many sets of reps, time of attention, etc.?
Once you got to make it really simple and quick for
Right.
people. 30 seconds, 3 times, once a day for each muscle group. You should be able to move around, stretch yourself out 3 minutes, max,
Yeah.
5 minutes.
And is this mostly neurological benefit? It's signaling to the brain that it's safe to. What's happening when we're doing these? Not to get all physiological, but I'm curious about this. So what's
I
happening
think
there?
it's I think it's blood flow. I think it's mobility, passively mobility. I think it's just, yes, neurological adaptation and just the brain knowing that everything's okay. But if you have a tight muscle, you've got to pull on it with resistance in order for it to get some more motion. And the fact of the matter is you can pull on muscles and they'll never get more flexible. They will always remain that tension. But just the fact that you are pulling on them and getting a little deeper blood flow tends to help keep keep it just a little bit more mobile. And the synovial fluid likes to be moved around and
Yeah.
the joint health is just better. You can create more space in there and just have more mobility. I mean, just to be general.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So to get back to the assessment, took us on a little detour there for a moment. What does the rest of that process look like? So you were talking about most of the kind of consultation phase. Is there any more left to that before you would go into an actual assessment workout? Again, we're talking about someone here who has some kind of contraindication, some kind of injury or something.
Yeah, I think modifying the machines, knowing the list of things to do and not to do. I think sometimes um, during our, we just take people through a workout, their first workout. And if somebody's had herniated discs, we're just not going to have them on the shoulder press initially. We're going to do some different things. And then the next workout card will test the waters with some other things. I think also people's face tell us a lot. If I go to put someone on the neck machine and I see their face just like in fear, like, oh my God, I'm going to strengthen my neck and my neck hurts so much, I might not put them on the neck machine at first. I might bring them over to the bench and have them do some anti-gravity exercise with their neck first, just to build some trust in the fact that it's okay to use the muscles in your neck and strengthen them. So I think that's a big indicator too, is just how the client responds. We have a read and respond kind of thing, read their face, read their movement and respond to that. If someone winces throughout a range of motion, sometimes this happens a lot on the leg extension. If somebody's had a chronic knee problem, they might go through a range of motion, but just a little part of that range of motion hurts them. So we might learn that, hey, you know what? They have like a weak VMO. We really need to exploit this 0 to 30 degrees here on this leg extension before we go into the full range of motion. And just kind of learn maybe full range of motion hurts with someone who we're doing 10 static contractions. So, but usually we can get past those modifications, which is the celebratory thing. We tell the client, hey, this is a modification. And then when they're beyond it, they're like, huh, I am better. I do feel better. I am able to provide, better movements in my sport, my life. And I also think in the assessment, a rabbit hole that some of us have been taught to go down in the personal training world is balance assessments and skill training assessments. And I don't think that we really learn what normal balance is first, or that skill training shouldn't take place in the gym. We don't understand what normal balance is or what skill training is. And so I think we grab those two things and we pull them into assessments, not really even understanding, am I really testing someone's balance or am I testing their skill? Am I really testing balance or is this a proprioception issue? And so if you don't understand the difference, you can go down a whole rabbit hole of telling someone they have terrible balance when really they have terrible skill for whatever it is that you're asking them to do. So we don't learn how to do a baseline balance like a Berg test or, some of the other tests that we would do just to see if neurologically or proprioceptively.
What's a Berg test? What is that?
It's just a balance test.
What do you do
like
exactly?
A 4-point. So you would put your feet like one in front of the other.
Oh, yeah.
Stand up on one foot.
They do this when you've been drinking as well, right?
Sometimes. Yeah, balance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Touch your nose, proprioception,
Is this this conflation of balance and skill test? Is this what's happening a lot in like the professional sports teams with the sports scientists who think you need to do all this fancy, skill training when, for instance, athletes are coming off injuries and rehabbing, getting back ready to play in the competitive event? They're doing like, running with parachutes and doing all sorts of random drills, balance, Bosu balls, all this type of stuff. It's really, is that what's happening here in part? I know there's probably more to it. There's coaching folklore and I don't know, other things in play, but and other misaligned financial incentives. But is this also the problem here, discerning between improving someone's balance and skill?
For sure. I mean, I think the way to screw someone up neurologically the best is to give them a skill that is almost exactly like the skill you want them to do, because that neurological pattern is going to be created right next to the one you want it to do. And when you go to do the thing, that's most important, like maybe get a basketball and a hoop. Well, if you've been practicing with a heavier basketball than what's regulation, now your whole skill is off. So how does your brain know which what the weight of the ball is, right? And which neurological pattern is it going to jump to first? So I think we do a disservice to a lot of our athletes by creating patterns right next to the pattern that we really want to perfect. And so, yes, I think we've created a full niche field, industry, money producing, whatever, with a lot of gimmicks and a lot of things that aren't necessary.
It's mad to me because it must be obvious to the players. I mean, I know, and I've never been a professional athlete or anything like that, but I know when I used to play basketball that if I was shooting on an 11-foot, so I remember we used to play, there's one court, most courts would have regulation 10 feet, 10 foot, I think it's 10 foot basketball hoops. And there'd be this one basketball court that had an 11-foot hoop. And it was really weird because you'd shoot on it and just the first like 20 shots all would be air balls. I might have, well practiced jump shot where it was like just the same every time, just an air ball through the bottom, through the bottom. Then eventually I'd adjust to 11 foot, but then go back to 10 foot, you're launching bricks right into the backboard over the top, until you adjust again. So surely professional athletes must see this. They must see that when you're using a heavier baseball bat, when you come to actually use a regular weight baseball bat, you're totally off. I just don't get that. Surely just intuitively, they should see this. Is that not, do you not think that should be the case?
I do. I do think it's the case. But again, I think when you have an expert in front of you,
Right.
Who is the guru, you're going to listen because you want, especially an athlete wants a competitive edge and they think everyone else is doing more and has the better guru and is going to have a competitive edge. So just that in itself has some competitive nature too. I want to be doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, yes, I agree. If you give someone, like you said, a weighted bat, they're not going to be able to hit the ball with a regular bat. They're just going to be off. Like, why couldn't Michael Jordan hit the ball? Like, if skill training was relatable and transferable, then Michael Jordan would have been the best baseball player in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't. He was pretty bad at it. But he had tremendous hand-eye coordination when it came to basketball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And skill.
Yeah. Yeah. Another rabbit hole we go down. Just, I guess, aware of time. I'd like to wrap in a moment. But yeah, I guess maybe it is probably a good time to wrap up, Patty, unless you've got other closing thoughts, but we'll certainly talk about your, where how they can contact you to find out more about your coaching and speaking, etc. I think it's so valuable. But before we get there, you want any kind of final thoughts you want to share on this idea of bridging the gap between physiotherapy and personal training? Perhaps, I know there's a lot we didn't get to. That's always the case. But is there something really kind of, pertinent and important that you want to share on this before we wrap up?
I just really am passionate about helping personal trainers get the respect and the referrals that they deserve, having the knowledge. I think sometimes just ignorance, and ignorance isn't a bad word. It's a great word. It just means we need to learn more. If we don't have the knowledge, then we can't provide that to our clients. And so my hope is that we bridge that gap between the physical therapy world and the personal training world, and personal training becomes a little safer and physical therapy becomes a little more long-term and next level. Or we work collaboratively together on a team where we have mutual respect for each other. It's very often that we might have a client who did something outside of their workouts, maybe fell, got in a car accident, has a chronic sacroiliac problem where we're like, no, you need to go see Dr. Hadley, or you need to go see, go here. Like having that back and forth referral relationship is really important. So that's my hope, is that we can kind of get everyone more on the same page of helping the patient, the client, achieve their best functioning life forever. So we need to decrease wear and tear. We need to know the human body and how it responds to certain stresses and exercise, and wrap that up together.
Yeah, I think this is so valuable because just as I'm, one of the things I've been thinking about during this podcast is, I obviously have a fair amount now personal training sessions under my belt. Obviously, listeners will know by this point probably that I don't do any personal training now. Um, but I did for a while there, and I've read most of our favorite books in this industry. I did a HIT uni personal training course. However, there are a lot of things you shared on this podcast, Patty, that I didn't know, right? Like, oh, if the knees bow in on a leg press, that means they've got a weak adductor probably. I didn't know that. And that's kind of a little bit worrying. And look, I just want to be clear, like HIT Uni is a fantastic course and gave me a great foundation. But one of the questions I have, and we haven't got time to go into this now, Patty, but things that I've been thinking about is, what else can we do? What level do we need to get to in order to achieve what we're talking about here, which is bridging this gap, building more trust with physios and medical professionals, building those relationships up so that we can help more people, and as Pete Circle would say, make a lot more money, right? Because there's
Mhm.
probably a lot of money left on the table because we haven't been working on this, which I think is a strong incentive for people to invest in your coaching, your speaking, because this is something that's not only going to, really help their clients, but also just help them grow their business. So if people want to learn more about that, it's info at rocksolidfitnessfl.com, and they're going to shoot you an email. Hey, Patty, I'm interested in learning more. And then you can tell them what you're doing, what your plans are in terms of speaking engagements and courses. I mean, I think there's so much here you can do, like a whole syllabus almost in terms of really helping our colleagues understand how they can build those relationships up. What are the exact systems and processes that they need to implement in their business to be really quite rigorous about working with people with injuries, so that you can build that trust. But I almost feel like I'm not to start building your curriculum for you now, Patty, because I'm sure you've already built your own. But I almost feel like, because I know all this stuff, it's like you can help people actually forge those relationships up in terms of getting the medical professionals into the studio for a workout. Because as we said at the start of this, that's super important too. So you have that rapport and they have that understanding of exactly what you're doing. Because I know the rare thing about you, Pat, is you've got a strong business acumen, but you've also got a lot of knowledge around personal training, exercise, and physiotherapy too. So I think that could be very valuable. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the course will be set up with all like, education on the workout itself, but then the second half will be about creating your business and how to structure your business. I think personal trainers need some help with that too.
Yeah, very much so. Awesome. Thank you so much for making the time today.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's always great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, to get the show notes for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com, search episode 460. And until next time, thank you very much for listening. This episode is brought to you by Imagine Strength, your go-to for safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training equipment. Growing a successful high-intensity training business requires workout equipment that's not only high quality, but also intelligently designed to fit the unique needs of your studio. And that's where Imagine Strength comes in. Drawing on the wisdom of the legendary Arthur Jones, Imagine Strength has crafted a groundbreaking line of fitness equipment that's as affordable as it is efficient, giving your studio the upgrade it needs without breaking the bank. The team at Imagine Strength breathes HIT. Their passion for high-intensity training shines through in their designs, which they've consistently refined and innovated for optimum effectiveness and user experience. From my personal experience at Rec, I can attest to the careful consideration and craftsmanship that goes into every single piece. My Imagine Strength workout was absolutely brutal, in a good way, of course. Now, what makes Imagine Strength truly stand out? They have innovative equipment tailored for the unique needs of HIT studios. affordable and efficient designs, lowering the barriers to entry for a HIIT business, continuous innovation and refinement, ensuring your studio stays ahead of the curve. Founder Jeff Turner and his team are dedicated to moving the HIIT industry forward and making strength training accessible to more people than ever before. Here's how you get started. Number 1, visit imaginestrength.com. Number 2, discuss your specific needs with the team. And number 3, select the equipment that will propel your business to the next level. Head to imaginestrength.com today and give your HIIT business the Imagine Strength edge. Be part of the HIIT revolution and see firsthand how their unique equipment can transform your studio's workout experience. Elevate your HIIT business with Imagine Strength.
Let's go.